Well, folks, Happy New Year. It's pretty wild and surreal that it is 2022. Man, it just feels so weird. Feels like 2021 was a big year for everybody. And in 2021, I don't know what happened to it. Well, now we're here, okay? 2022. We're talking about, what are we talking about?
Year-end wrap.
Year-end wrap.
It's a wrap-up. It's a classic Spotify year-end wrap. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Everybody needs that. Podcast needs that.
That's right. It's a mere wrap up.
Our life needs that.
Yeah. What was your top artist for your Spotify wrap up?
Oh,
do you remember?
It's always classic. It hasn't changed for the last 5 years. Chance
the rapper.
Yeah, 5 years. It's like it's always like Chance is in the top. One of Justin Bieber's songs is in my top songs, always, and then Lainey.
Nice.
Classic. And I think
it's a powerful trio.
My second most, or my most listened to song was Shallow.
Heck yeah.
Maybe that was because we went to that concert.
Yeah. I think Shallow is actually on I think he was my top, but I also had Chance in my top as well. And Khalid, is that his name?
Yeah. Khalid.
Yeah. I don't know. But yeah, that was also, yeah. Good stuff.
I always have something weird pop up in there too. Something like my genres were kind of weird too. It's like something so strange out of the blue. I'm like, Chicago rap. I think that's what Chance is labeled under. It was like my top listened to genre was Chicago
I love that
rap.
Chicago rap.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
A lot of rap and hip hop is in my top list.
Yeah, so. That's wonderful. Tasting some coffee like always.
I'll take the blame for that.
It's actually not, in my opinion, not as bad as I thought it would. Mm-hmm. Guys, we screwed up the grind size on this by far, we do on 90% of the episodes. So if you've been listening, this is like nothing new to you guys. But at the same time, there was some interesting very bits of like fruity on the aromas right out of the craft. Yeah, it's still sweet. It still has that very much the anaerobic natural flavor profile. Like I just finished an anaerobic natural Columbia from Luna, and this tastes very similar. Has a lot of the similar characteristics as well. So
yeah, even considering that it is definitely under extracted.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's still like it has like a juicy, thick body.
Yeah, actually,
for the most part.
Yes. I actually was gonna say I'm actually, even though this is under extracted, I'm actually liking the mouthfeel on it. Yeah. It's really nice.
Very nice.
And there's also something very interesting in the aftertaste. Like right now, I'm just tasting it. The aftertaste, some nice I don't know. I mean, I guess we were calling it cherry or strawberry. So kind of in that like fruity berry sweetness, some interestingness. So.
Totally, it has that like malic acidity that I really enjoy in a lot of coffees. It's very like rich, very thick, very juicy, and sweet. Like malic acidity to me like cuts through, like it's not as tart as you would have like some form of citrus in your coffee. So it's very, very sweet. Yeah,
that's excellent. And some of that, I think when you brew it actually well and well extracted, actually tastes a lot more like a pear.
Yeah, for sure.
And because right now it just tastes like you get the sweet acidity, but maybe this may be the wrong word, but clarity.
Yeah.
It's definitely a lot more clear when it's extracted, right? Yeah. Which totally makes sense. That's what a good extraction should taste like.
Right. Especially if you're doing V60 or the Tricolate. That's what I've been doing. Hands down, super tasty. Yeah. Way more complexity than this batch brew now.
Well, folks, if you're wondering, man, what's this coffee they're drinking? Well, as of today, this episode is dropping on January, the 1st of January, 2022, once again, the new year. And we're dropping a new coffee. And this is a coffee that it's unlike anything we've ever dropped since the beginning of Mir. But I think it's also, the reason why I chose dropping it on January 1st is because I think this year is going to be a really interesting year with a lot of changes to Mir. Anything from a lot of the coffees that we're serving, how we're roasting them, but also changing to a lot of the stuff that we're going to be dropping here in the next couple months. Lots of really interesting stuff, coffee related and not coffee related.
Yeah.
So this is like a very exciting coffee, and it's from the infamous farm in Colombia, El Virgil. Which has been such a hot commodity this past year. The Colombian coffees that are coming out of the coffees that are coming out of that farm is just they're pretty tasty. They're slapping, they're spanking, everything. So
Definitely.
yeah.
I mean, it's the famous Elias and Shady.
Yeah.
I think Bader or Bader.
Yeah.
Like D or T, depending on how it's spelled. But yeah, very, I would say like one of those spotlight producer and farms that a lot of us have like talked about and heard about. So I'm super excited to have that coffee on our menu. I'm like super pumped.
Yeah.
And to go into the new year with this coffee, like it's super exciting. Like we've gradually like bought coffees that were like wilder, and now releasing this coffee in the beginning, like you said, of 2022, I think is a good way to kind of wrap up the year, but also look into 2022 and be like, okay, we've got some wild stuff coming up.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also like to sprinkle some more stuff on top of that is that really the beginning of the year is like kind of our anniversary almost. We sold the first coffee bags of Mir before our site was even up. It was to a buddy of ours, Joel Swick. He bought it as a Christmas gift for his family members. Yeah. And I remember that experience. I gave it to him at Makeworth. And in the beginning of the year was when we launched the website. And we had such a spectacular support from the community, excitement, just so awesome. And so 2 years later now, there's a lot that we're going to talk about in this podcast for this past year, which is year 2. But to be kind of entering our 3rd year of running Mir with this coffee is like such an honor, such a pleasure, and just so exciting. So this is just kind of like a celebratory coffee. And well, there's also one more coffee from Virgil coming. That's a sneak peek, which will be announced soon as well. So all of January will be packed with many different new coffee. So it's gonna be it's gonna be wild. So
yeah, and it's great to look forward to 2022. Yeah, but I think also we spend so much time just like gazing ahead into the year without actually evaluating what happened in the last year that we went through.
Of course.
So I think that's a crucial part, is to like wrap up, reevaluate last year, learn from what has happened in the past year to be able to project very well into the future of like the coming year.
Totally.
Like I'm excited for that. I'm excited for what 2021 brought us. Yeah. Because like we've learned a lot. Like insane. Like I feel like this has been a long year, not because it was as hard as 2020, but because of like how many things that we've like tweaked, we've understood, and we've kind of like maybe not fully cemented, but we like literally said like, okay, this is very, very important to us.
And a lot of that is like, you know, learning as a business, as individuals, as also a family running a business together, just kind of everything. But before we go into the podcast, I just want to say to all you podcast listeners, like, thank you so much for the support this year, listening to our podcast, commenting on our YouTube videos, reaching out through the Instagram DMs, the messages that we receive. You guys have no idea how helpful and encouraging and just meaningful that is. Like, genuinely, like, we really appreciate that. And it's awesome to be surrounded by such an awesome coffee community. That is just... You guys are just spectacular. So also to this podcast community, we want to give 15% off for the entire first week of January. So you can snag a bag of this El Virgil to enjoy. Just use the code called Mir Podcast 15. Mir Podcast 15. You're going to get 15% off. That's our entire store. But honestly, we just kind of like push you to this virtual coffee. Use it on this coffee or use it on multiple coffees. I don't know, whatever way you like. Because this is like not just, once again, a celebratory coffee, but kind of like our gift back to the community of saying like, no, like we've gone this far and we're actually going to keep going.
Totally.
And this is just, it feels like 2 years, but it feels like it just started. Like the other day, like earlier today, I saw like a TikTok trend, like layer this sound over like a memory that you really miss.
Yeah.
And it was just like a still shot of like a memory that somebody missed with the song. And I'm like, if I were to do that, I would post the video of us rolling in the roaster into the roastery.
Oh yeah.
Like, it's just like,
That's a good one.
the last 2 years have just flown by, and there's so much that we could say about that, but that's not what the podcast is about. 2021 wrap up. Number one, let's just get right into this. Something that we learned this past year was a lot about like taking what's on the inside and being able to portray that and put that into words.
Yeah.
And what we mean by that is like a lot of like running Mirror, we have a lot of ideas and a lot of dreams and visions and goals for Mirror and what we want to do with coffee producers and partnering with them and telling their stories and all this stuff. And to be honest, it's been kind of difficult in some ways to articulate that.
Right.
While not leaving any of the bits and pieces of information, important information out, because it's so grandiose, you know?
Right.
And what happened? We went down to Portland on your birthday weekend. What was that like?
Even stepping back, before that, you and I, like, I think at one point in June, we were just like, this needs to happen. Like, we need to dedicate time to flush out, like, vision, flush out heart, flush out mind, and, like, put it on paper. And I think that very act itself makes it more tangible. Sometimes when it's just flying around in the ether and you're like, oh, all these great ideas, they're really, really hard to execute. But when you put it out and you actually like jot it down on paper, create a document around it, it means so much more. So we decided that we're going to turn my semi-birthday trip into more of a business trip.
But we extended the birthday trip to make room for that.
Sure. Yeah. So we said, hey, we wanted to do this for my birthday. Like, always want to go to the outdoors. We plan on going to, is it not Mount Hood, Lake or River, Hood River.
Hood
right?
River, yeah.
Yeah, we're like, want to do a couple of hikes there, like a little bit, like out in the mountains. But also, let's
check out Freem.
Yeah, check out Freem, which... Never mind. Won't get into that. But we also wanted to start before that to get this ethos flushed out. Yeah. So I think like I remember it vividly sitting down at Barista, trying to write all this out and not knowing where to start.
Yeah.
Because it is a difficult task. It's like when you have vision and you're a visionary, like your natural like habitat is to dream and to like just get vision. It's really hard to make it practical. Yeah. And I think we struggled to that. Like that trip was a struggle. We didn't get basically like nothing done during that trip. Like we got a few things here and there, wrote down some verbs, some nouns, like the classic that you would read in a book about how to write a mission and vision statement. Yeah. But it wasn't really tangible. But I think what that trip did is it actually projected us to take this idea seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's one thing, like, there's a Harvard study done that took like a lot of students and pretty much looked at how they set goals. And a lot of them, I think it was like 3% had goals written down and in their mind. Like another good chunk just had them in their mind, and then the rest just didn't have any goals. And it was something wild like that. The 3% that had goals and had them written down were making on average 10 times more than the rest of the class combined. Mm-hmm. That's bonkers. Now, could this be a coincidence? Sure. Statistics and all those, they're not always the most accurate. However, what that taught me was having something in your mind, in your brain, but also being able to convey that on paper, solidify that, or put it in a video, or put it on some hard copy. That transition, there's something magical there, supernatural there, that can actually keep yourself accountable, but also it kind of gives body and life to something that, to be honest, our brains are just creative beings that have an imagination that just can run wild.
Yep.
But you're literally taking that imagination, putting it into a capsule and saying, here it is, here's what it looks like. And defining that on paper is so important, you know? And so this year, a lot of what we learned is like, we had a lot of, I mean, we've been visioning this for 5-6 years.
Right.
I remember talking to you on the phone back when you still lived in Florida about starting a coffee company, whether that's a shop or a roastery or whatever. But it's that transition from your thoughts into something tangible is a game changer.
Yeah.
You know, and something that, like something, and for you listeners, think back to maybe this year, did you do that? Or maybe going into next year, how can we make goals and vision and make dreams that are actually tangible, that you can write down, that you can write out, you know, a journey or a process of, man, this is how I think it's going to happen. This is how I'm going to approach this. This is what I'm thinking about. And that's honestly not the fun part. It's usually the part that we're like, okay, do we really have to do this? Is it very necessary? But it's like, yes, it actually makes a big difference.
Yeah. I think this structure that you're talking about, the practical outcome or the application of this structure allows you to basically say no to things that don't really align. Like I don't know for y'all folks that are listening, like for me, it's easy to say yes because a lot of things excite me. But for every like yes you say, we're not unlimited beings. Like we can't say yes to everything and accomplish everything to the full potential of it. So you have to say no. And having this structure is going to be a great way for you in 2022 to say no to certain things so you can say yeses to things that are make you way more alive and to things that actually bring you that fulfillment in 2022.
And are going to get you on a closer trajectory to actually achieving that, to seeing what you want happen actually happen. So, that's that. I know we could talk about way more, but time is running. Number 2, what is it? What do we learn?
Man, I think this is going from something abstract to something very specific.
And very technical.
Yeah, which still aligns under our fact, like when we talk about our values and our ethos, like quality is very, very important.
Yeah.
Like we believe not only in being ethical and sustainable from like the supply chain. Yeah. We also like want to serve great coffees. Like, you know what I mean?
Course.
Like that's our goal. And in order to serve great coffees, we have to find great coffees, and then we have to roast great coffees. Yeah. And one of the things that I believe like learned throughout this course of roasting through 2021 is the importance of, you know, color and temperature in the roasting process. Yeah. And from a broad perspective, like I think if you're a barista or if you're even just brewing coffee at home, you know the difference between, let's say, a dark roasted coffee and a light roasted coffee. Like the general, like big differences.
Or even a medium and a light.
Right. Yeah. Like the spectrum is pretty big. And I think for the most part, a lot of us have preferences within that spectrum. Yeah. And we know why we prefer those things. Now, for a roaster, it's a little bit different in the sense of like, within light roast, like a lot of our coffees, we lean towards a light roast and medium to light or light. Yeah. And within that even title, there's like a lot of variance. Like not all light roasted coffees taste good. Yeah. In the same way, like not all medium coffees or dark roast coffees taste bad. Like, you know what I mean? Of course. There's that preference, and within that, like dialing in on what it means and how you prioritize certain things in the roast. Yeah. We learned that temp is high on the priority list. I mean, I think we would agree that it may be the most important thing in our roast profile. Yeah.
And it's not just necessarily just temp, and color of the bean, but it also has a lot to do with not just like, okay, we want light roast, we're dropping the coffee at light, because even, I mean, kind of going off of what you said just right now is that like you can have a light roasted coffee and have like many variations of the same bean being light. It's not like 1 degree is light, the next degree is not light, and
Right.
the degree before that is not light. No. There's like a range of light roast, but where you are in that range and how you got within that range plays a huge role. Just like you said, not all light roasted coffees are going to taste wonderful and delightful. And same thing with not all medium roasted coffees or dark roasted coffees have to be necessarily bad. But also it's learning how to get to that color or that temp in context with the rest of the roast.
Yeah.
And so something one might say is that like some of that bit of information is that coming from like your DTR, your development time ratios, what your ratio is of your development time, which is once your coffee cracks to the end of the roast, what percentage of that is of your entire roast, which gives you a ballpark as to how you're doing in the first half of the roast as well.
Totally.
You know? So, I mean, it's not just about changing your tail end, your end, but it could be also changing your front end, the beginning of your roast, you know? However, all of that could still be bottled up in a light roast.
Yep. Exactly.
And that's the nuances of that has been a lot of what we've juggled with, you know, and especially where you might think you might have a different preference, and I think you do, but I lean towards on some coffees to go a little darker because I just like something that's a little more light medium. Not on all coffees. I don't think all coffee should go. Even roasting this Virgil coffee, we're like, oh no, this could be tweaked. Or like a new coffee we're dropping here soon in the next couple of weeks, we're like, oh no, this might need to go a little darker because it's just too light. Yeah. You know, like you're missing out on a lot. And so finding that balance, and folks, we're talking about like the span of like 6 degrees.
Yeah. I mean, 6 degrees is huge. It's been sometimes like 2 degrees that we've like debated on, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's the complexity of it. I'm saying is that for, you know, your average listener, some people might think like, oh, they're talking about like 20 degree differences or 10 degrees. It's like, oh no, this could be like a 6 degree difference. Yeah. And 6 degrees could be like 30 seconds in your roast. Which like, I don't know, if you were to ask me like 5 years ago, if you're like, hey, could you taste the difference between like 30 seconds in a roast in terms of color? I'd be like, dude, there's no way. And then now after doing cupping on cupping on cupping, I'm like, oh.
There is a difference.
That window, that small window is a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah. And it's crazy to think like there's so many decisions that you need to make throughout, let's say, a 9 to 12 minute process of coffee going from green to brown, and like nuances within that time range. Like, let's say within the course of like 10 seconds, like we try to get all of our roasts to be like within 15 seconds of one another. And that's still in my mind, like saying that is scary because that still feels like a big range. Yeah. But if you step back and look within 10 minutes, 15 seconds, like that's a very, very small margin of error. Whether that's your development time ratio, your total roast time, and all of those things like play a role in how you do that. So like when it comes to making those decisions, like we've just seen how important it is to make the final decision based on color and temp.
Yeah. And tightening that up. Yeah. And really like getting into it has been quite the journey. So, but I'm pumped about it.
One. Yeah. We've learned a lot about roast profiling this year.
Yeah. Which actually that leads to like the last thing that I'd say is asking for help. And with roasting, thank God for, you know, some of the resources that we have, whether that's books, you know, podcasts or online courses that we've listened to Rob, we've listened to Ann Cooper, we listened to Scott Rayo, but also Scott Rayo's roasting coaching forum has been really awesome to be able to reach out to Scott and be able to get some awesome feedback right back. Right. And even just like these past couple of weeks have been really interesting to hear what his takes are on some things, which just leads me to think that like a lot of things in life, like especially things that are way bigger than yourself, that like you're just aiming into the unknown of like hey, we're just on this journey.
Right.
We want to tell stories. We want to empower producers. We want to build really great, beautiful relationships, but also serve tasty coffee. That's the trajectory, but you're going into unknown land out there.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that means you need to ask for help. And sometimes people that are actually in that unknown land that you want to be in,
Yep.
you know? And sometimes, I mean, a lot of times actually more that asking for help is not easy, but it's probably, it's a game changer.
I mean, not to be super cheesy, but I would say like, you know, every Frodo needs a Gandalf.
Oh, yes.
Or every Frodo needs a Samwise.
I wish we just ended the podcast on that. It's beautiful.
Yeah, totally. Asking for help is, it's hard. It just may be, I don't even know how to word it, because hard is an understatement. It's like, it's almost like counter to your ego, because I think a lot of the times, like, you really want to do everything like yourself. Like, and that has a little bit to do with like just pride and wanting to like control every aspect of everything. And I think a lot of the times when you don't ask for help, you lose focus of the greater and grander like purpose of why and what you're doing. So asking for help actually allows you to focus more on what's the primary important part of it. Whether that would be like, I don't know, we've asked help in design. Like we know what looks good, we know what we like, but accomplishing that is not necessary for us to do when there's people who are like specialized in that. You know what I mean?
Of course.
And there's a lot of elements that, for example, we do our own social media marketing. We enjoy that. We're good at that. Like that's what we love to do. We can handle that. But we also are, again, we're limited to our time and our energy, and we can't accomplish everything. And if we really want our business to succeed, and like for all you listeners, like if you really want to like grow and like prosper and like move forward and not limit yourself, like you need a team around you.
Of course.
You need help. I remember sitting down with a friend of mine and he challenged me on that. He's like, dude, why are you trying to do everything for Amir? Like, why? Like, do you know that at some point you are going to get to the point where you're completely stifling your growth? Like, in order for you to grow, you need to release some things and focus on other things. And that's super hard, especially when, you know, you're the co-founder and CEO of a company.
I think that's the even more complicated is when you're the owner of the business. And I see this all the time with like business owners that because a lot of these things, asking for help sometimes comes at a cost of money and finances. And that's hard as a small business. And oftentimes people just don't see that giving up some of that, the ROI on that is significant. But that trade-off has to happen. You need to let go of something that's precious to you to gain more over a short span of, you know, of uncomfortable season, you know? And so I think as a business owner for sure, and I think this will resonate with a lot of business owners, is that it's actually really hard to let go of something that you want to have control over the entire, over everything, you know? It gets really just difficult. And I think a lot of the times because we've just poured out all of our energy and time and focus into building this thing. And we think that, man, one wrong move is going to destroy everything, or I can't entrust this to somebody else because they don't care as much as I do. And I know more because I've built this. Well, sure, on some things, yes. But really, in reality, I think there's huge opportunities when you can step back from something and let somebody who's more educated, who's more skilled, who's more talented than you, take those avenues and those things and actually just take them and run with them. Because they're the experts in that field. They know way better. And letting go as a business owner is just so difficult. Because your business, this little thing, matters and is so close to your heart. And at the end of the day, it's like your livelihood. I mean, you're getting paid from it. It's your reputation. It's your networking. It's a lot of things, you know? So it's hard, but something I've learned, at least from like running Mirror the last 2 years, has been like, not all the time have I let go and it's been a good decision, but I would say a lot of times when I have let go and allowed somebody more skilled than me, it actually opened up so much room for opportunity and growth. And it gave me more brain space to focus on the things that I am actually good at.
Yeah.
The things that I can actually maneuver and take to a whole other level.
Yep.
But the other flip side of this is that you can't take it to a whole other level because you're caught up in thinking about the other things that don't very come naturally to you. It's like doubling down on your strengths and finding people who are good at in your weaknesses to help accommodate that.
Yeah. Plus, and like, kind of like side step of that is the fact that if you try to do everything yourself, like if you try to accomplish every aspect of your business and be in control of all of that, you're going to create a one-dimensional business.
Yeah.
Because you are going to do everything the way you do it, which sounds great, but it doesn't give that flow of creativity a bigger lane. Like we always talk about staying in our lane.
Yeah.
It's great
Yeah.
if it's great to, and I still support the idea of staying in your lane. But if your lane is only enough for 2 footsteps, then it's great. You may get there, but you won't be as dynamic. Like your lane needs to grow so that you can actually take part of like a bigger thing and get into like somewhere quicker or even create more opportunity for you to stay in your own lane.
Yeah, for sure. Or better yet, bring people alongside you that are in their own lane, in their own niche.
Yes. Yeah.
And let them help you and support you in what your grandiose vision or dream or goal is. Right. And I love that you said it's one-dimensional. I totally agree with that because everybody that you bring onto your team or everybody that supports you in your goals or dreams for 2022 is going to bring a sort of their own perspective, their own creative vision, their own set of experiences. And yeah, you're totally right. If you're just doing that yourself, it becomes one-dimensional. It becomes boring. It's not dynamic. Yeah, I totally agree, man. That's so beautiful. I mean, something I talked about with Jared that one time at our pop-up where I was like, man, how cool would it be to bring a lot of creatives into one room and say, you guys just do what you do best. Yeah. And just let them run free.
Totally.
To me, I'm like, oh, there's something beautiful in that.
Yeah.
And that goes across the board is finding people to come alongside you that are really good at their individual things. But so that's one thing that maybe I'd encourage like folks, like you're planning something big for 2022 or you have some dreams, some goals, go at it, but don't go at it by yourself.
Yeah, totally. That's excellent. I mean, we could wrap all of that up and going back to like when you're asking for help, like if you have a very strong ethos that's fleshed out, you can find the right people to join you.
For sure.
That's it, dude. Killer.
Boom, boom, boom. Well, that's it. That's a wrap. And I'm pumped that that's how we're going into 2022.
Let's go.
The first podcast of 2022. That's exciting. Well, folks, there you have it. Hopefully this was encouraging and inspiring as you head into the new year. Remember, Mirror Podcast, 15% off, some new coffees. There's many new coffees dropping in the next couple weeks. It's going to get wild. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you guys have a spectacular weekend, but also a very extraordinary year. Cheers, y'all.